students, our next portion is to isolate our 4-methoxyaniline from our mixture. So here is our solution, our original solution of a known mixture. And I'm going to go ahead and clean this up with a little bit of brine. Brine is also known as saturated sodium chloride solution. So, and this is always done to help wash out any compounds from the organic layer that should not be there at the moment. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and add a milliliter of brine. You might know the term brine from pickling things at home, for example, and that's pretty much the same compound, a very saturated sodium chloride solution. I'm going to go ahead and stop her here. Before I invert, just want to show you we do get 2 layers here. Okay, and I'm going to gently invert the 2 layers and let the 2 layers settle. And again, this is just to wash any compounds that shouldn't be in the organic layer. If they're ionic, they have now gone to the aqueous layer down below. All right, I'm going to go ahead and remove this lower layer, and this is just going to go into a waste container. So now we can proceed on to the rest of our extraction. Let me just go ahead and cap this waste container to avoid any spilling. All right, so our next job here is to acidify our solution, and we are acidifying so that we can try to isolate the 4-methoxyaniline. So I'm going to go ahead and add 2 milliliters, of 2 molar HCl. And if you notice, again, we get 2 separate layers. So I'm going to stop her and invert. And if you notice this time, we're actually getting a slight discoloration of the top layer. So it's remaining dark, but it is getting a little bit lighter than it was before. Let me invert one more time. Okay, and I'll use my blue glove hand here to show you the difference between the 2 layers. All right, I'm going to go ahead and remove this lower layer using a pipette. Okay, and we will repeat the addition of HCl to our test tube. This time I'm going to actually add a 1/3 milliliter of HCl, just to ensure we get a full transfer. Again, separating into 2 layers, and we do get a pretty significant difference in the color of the 2 layers. Okay, let me invert one more time. Okay, so looks like our 2 layers have separated. Again, I'm going to use my pipette here to remove the lower layer. Once I get all of this lower layer transferred, we will move on to the next step. Okay, so our next job here is to add the 3 molar sodium hydroxide solution so that we can basify our solution again. So I'm going to go ahead and add a milliliter of 3 molar hydroxide to our solution here. And if you notice, we're still only working with 1 layer here because remember, this was aqueous layer from our previous extraction. Okay, and so we have 1 milliliter of the sodium hydroxide added. Let me go ahead and cap our solution. I'm going to stop her and invert a few times, so let's make sure that we are well mixed. And I'm going to pause here and just check the pH of my solution. Okay, so students, we have added a total of 3 milliliters of sodium hydroxide, and I just wanted to show you here with our pH paper that we are now a very basic solution. So you can see in my hands here, I kind of have a little bit of a, telltale sign of what we were going through. So at first we were a little too acidic. We added more sodium hydroxide and obtained a final pH here of about 12. So this is very, very basic now. And now that my solution has been made basic, I can extract the organic component. So I'm going to go ahead and add 3 milliliters of ethyl acetate. Oh, and one more item, we actually had to increase volume of test tube. So we moved all of our liquid from the smaller test tube to a larger one. And that's just to ensure that we are able to do the extraction with the ethyl acetate. Okay, and so now we will go ahead and proceed with addition of the ethyl acetate. And here we should get, again, 2 layers of liquid. So let me add 3 milliliters total there. And I will show you that we see 2 layers again in the test tube. So, and I'll use my hand here. I don't know if that's a... I have our stopper here. I'm going to go ahead and invert so that we can mix the 2 layers. Now that I have inverted, I'm going to go ahead and remove the stopper to release the pressure. We are building up a little bit of pressure. And we're going to let the 2 layers settle. Once we have the 2 layers settled out, we will remove that lower aqueous layer. And so you can see, you know, the bubbles settling there. And so I'm going to go ahead and put it down so it'll be undisturbed.
Is there a color change from the top layer from the bottom layer?
A slight color change, okay. Yeah. So let me see if I can find you know, I think the test tube rack here will be useful just because it's white. So if you notice here, there is a slight coloration of that top layer, and it's turning a slight brown color. Hopefully this reminds you of a particular solution you saw earlier in this experiment. We are now removing the lower aqueous layer, and I'm going to go ahead and just place it in a temporary test tube here. So let me go ahead and... Okay, so again, if you'll notice, I'll use this white sheet of paper here to show you that there is a coloration happening in the organic layer. Okay, and you know, it's got a slight tannish color to it, and just for comparison, you can see that the aqueous layer is much more clear in comparison. Okay. To the test tube that has been labeled organic, I'm just going to use a funnel here to ensure that we transfer all of the liquid. Okay. And so I'm going to go ahead and set this to the side. Now, because we want to wash again with ethyl acetate, I'm going to take my solution, my aqueous solution, pour it back to my container here, and then we're going to repeat the ethyl acetate rinse. Okay, great. And we'll repeat the inversions. And the goal here again is just to ensure we collect as much of the organic compound as possible. Awesome. Okay. All right, students, so we're again removing that lower aqueous layer from our solution here, and it's going into the waste test tube. So now that I have all of my aqueous layer out, I'm going to combine my two organic layers. Okay. And next up, I will add some sodium sulfate to dry my compound. So let me grab my sodium sulfate again. And again, we're going to add a few grains, probably about 0.01 of a gram. There we go. Okay, and I will lift it up just so that you can see we are making a nice system here. We're going to go ahead and dry the sodium sulfate, or let the solution you know, dry completely, and then filter. And last item to do here, folks, is get the solution through our cotton-tipped pipette and as a filtration device. So there we go. And we are dispensing that liquid into a pre-weighed scintillation vial. You will get the data for the scintillation vial in just a little bit. Okay, and then just to ensure we get that little bit of liquid that is stuck at the end of the pipette, we're going to add our little bulb and gently remove the rest of that liquid. Okay, so we have now isolated 4-methoxyaniline.